footy record. Hi everyone, welcome to On The Record, brought to you by Woolworths, as we take a sneak peek at the Round 10 edition of the AFL Record, Australia's #1 selling sports weekly magazine. And joining me to discuss the record this week is my friend and colleague from AFL Media, the Mayor of Wyndham Vale, Ben Collins. Benny, welcome to On The Record.
Thanks, Ash, and thanks for bowing to my pressure to be on this show.
Well, we're going to break the internet this week with having you on, of course, and Western Suburbs just won't cope, I don't think. But, Benny, look, it's a big week for the AFL. It's the Indigenous round, the Sir Doug Nicholls Indigenous round. It's not a new story for you. You've been following Sir Doug for several years and written about him before. Why is he such an important figure in footy?
Well, before he achieved all these amazing things for his people, Ash, he was actually a champion footballer. He was the first Aboriginal player to play for Victoria, and that was at a time when there was no other Aboriginal players playing in either the VFL or the VFA. And initially he was rejected by Carlton back in 1927. Some players refused to train with him, and the trainers refused to rub him down, which is just horrific by today's standards. And last week Carlton moved to rectify that in some way by apologising to the Nicholls family, and it was quite an emotional ceremony at Icon Park, and I was one of the few media privileged to be there.
Now, you spoke to a few members of the family. You tell a great story in the article about Ross Faulkner, the famous football manufacturer, and his relationship with Sir Doug.
Yeah, I actually tracked down the grandson of Ross Faulkner of the same name, and he's still running the company. Ross Faulkner, the original one, was a committee man at both Northcote and Fitzroy, and he helped get Doug Nicholls down to both of those clubs. And he actually put the native brand label on his footballs as a tribute to Sir Doug and their friendship. And a great story, Fitzroy was playing Melbourne at the MCG in the 30s, and Ross Faulkner was in the committee room, and a Melbourne official came up to Ross Faulkner and passed some shocking remarks about Doug Nicholls and Aboriginal people in general, and Ross Faulkner decked him on the spot, caused a bit of a ruckus, and I don't think that's happened too often.
So we had claret spilled on and off the ground that famous afternoon at the MCG.
Correct.
So also in this week's in the magazine, Glenn James, who was a great umpire in the 80s and 90s, and Indigenous umpire.
And he's actually related to Doug Nicholls distantly as well.
Right. Well, he's picked the best team in the last 25 years of Indigenous players that he has seen. Now, you need to buy the mag, obviously, to see it. Now, Benny, who's the best player you've seen in your time watching footy?
Well, I'd say Buddy Franklin at this stage. He's the current man who's right at the top of the flagpole there. He's 15th on the all-time goals list, and who knows where he'll be at the end of his long contract with the Swans. I think, was it Lee Matthews said that he wasn't from this planet? Well, I don't think he's from this universe anymore, Ash.
Yeah. And my two, I reckon, Andrew McLeod, and I find it hard to split Andrew McLeod and Cyril Rioli. I mean, Franklin's been great as well, obviously, but Rioli's given Hawthorn supporters a lot of joy over the years. And also in this week's record, speaking of Rioli, it's the 250th game for his Hawthorn teammate Jordan Lewis, and we also have a feature on him in the mag this week. So now turning to Match Centre, Benny, and it is a big week for Jack Redpath of the Western Bulldogs.
It is. He'll feel like he let the Dogs down last week by being unavailable for the Giants game through suspension. So he takes pressure off Jake Stringer, who became probably too much of a focus last week. He's a big anchor. He takes a contested mark. If he doesn't take a contested mark, he brings it to ground. He's a good kick. So he's a big in.
Turning now finally to the back half, Benny, and the big game, obviously, Friday night is at the SCG. Swans versus North Melbourne. North a 9-0, but they're still not the flag favourites. They're only about third or fourth in the line of betting. They've got a really big 6 weeks coming up. Well, firstly, why do you think they're not the flag favourites?
Well, I think there's a few North supporters out there who aren't exactly convinced about their side, probably because they haven't been overly convincing in a lot of their wins. They've never dominated a game from start to finish, although last week against Carlton that was pretty convincing. They beat the Dogs, they beat Adelaide before we knew what Adelaide were, so there have been impressive victories, but yeah, there's still a lot to play out.
All right, now I'm going to put you on the spot, Benny. We're going to go through the next 6 weeks, and you're going to tell me how they're going to go in each of those games. Starting Friday night, Sydney at the SCG.
Loss.
Richmond at Blundstone.
Win.
Geelong at Etihad.
Draw.
Oh, Benny. Hawthorn at Etihad.
I'd say they'll win that one.
Adelaide at Adelaide Oval,
Loss.
and West Coast in Perth.
Loss. It's hard, isn't it?
So that's a 2.5. You've got 2.5 wins out of the next 6. But that puts them back in the ruck and probably would justify why people don't think they're the favourite.
But they possibly could win 4.
They could. They are really an unknown, and next week's 6 weeks will be great. Benny, you've done very well.
Thanks, Ash. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on board, and we'll talk to you soon. Now to my tips for round 10. I got 6 last week. Let down particularly by the Hawks on the Friday night. They could have won that game. The big one Friday night at the SCG, I've got the Swans winning that one against North Melbourne by 7 points to snap North Melbourne's unbeaten run this year. I like Adelaide to beat the Giants, and that'll be a really good game on Saturday night at Adelaide Oval. I've got them by 4 points. And I think the Western Bulldogs will get the points on Sunday at the MCG by 11 points against Collingwood in what will be a really good game. And now, let's have a look at this week's nominees for the Woolworths Mark of the Year.
Holding up Adams. Quick kick out of the back, not far. Gathered by Selwood. Sends it back towards the hot spot. Oh, what a mark, Hawkins. Duncan sends it towards half forward. Plenty of cats in front spot. How about that?
Stratton's got the mark, plays on wide of the mark, sends it long back inside the forward 50. Sicily! Oh, Sicily. How about that? Impressive young player, spectacular mark.
Don't forget you can have your say by visiting markoftheyear.afl.com.au to register your vote. I'll be voting for Hawthorn youngster James Sicily for his great effort at the MCG on Friday night. So that's it for this week's edition of On The Record. Don't forget when you go to the footy this weekend to buy your copy of the AFL Record, $5. Look for the kids in the green caps, the green jackets for some great reading and great information on the great game of AFL footy. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next week.